Okay, thanks everybody for coming today and sharing your lunch with us and listening to a presentation about this project. So the Array of Things is an open source urban scale platform for research. I'm a collaborator on the project. I'm an architect. I teach architecture at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I'm also quite interested in physical and embedded computing and technology and how access to data is going to influence design and how then that might influence urban space, how it works, how we approach all of the challenges of producing the built environment. So the Array of Things, it's a network of interactive modular sensor boxes. So I'll give like the larger 30,000 foot view of the project, and then the project leader and collaborator, Charlie, will talk a little bit more in depth about the science and the research. So the idea is to deploy sensing boxes in great quantity and high resolution over the next 30 months in and around the city of Chicago for collecting real-time data on the city's environment, what happens in the infrastructure, the activity in the city, for research and also for public use. So the data will be open and available to both researchers and the public. So the node, each sensing node, the enclosure, will be mounted on city light poles. So we're working on side agreements with the city of Chicago to use the existing city infrastructure to place these things out there in the environment. They'll gather information on environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, light, air pollutants, things like that. Human activity as well, sound, foot traffic, motion, to better understand the city's natural and built environment. So all of the data will be available for developers, for policy makers, to enable tools and to build tools and activities around city interaction to make the city healthier, to make it more efficient, more livable. And also, it's our aspiration is that the Array of Things project will be a national instrument. It'll be an instrument that researchers from other places can use to kind of understand what's going on in our city and maybe apply methodologies and knowledge that is derived from the system to their own urban conditions. One of the things that kind of galvanized the project, a concretizing moment, was the ability for us to kind of work with the city's Department of Innovation and Technology and include the development of the Array of Things project in the city's technology plan. So the city of Chicago kind of understands that there's all sorts of infrastructural challenges that they're going to have to kind of face head on going forward. And one of them is to really consider developing streetscapes and street technology that allows the city to kind of understand what's going on in its space in a more verifiable way, in a more rational way. So we're hoping that as a piece of community technology, the Array of Things will really affect kind of policy making and kind of introduce a level of kind of data-driven decision making and facilitation and management because of the instrument. So why this device? To enable urban scale research. It's a development opportunity, prototyping, and the demonstration of the value of data and big data, for city making. It's an urban scale sensing platform. So we kind of see it as a breadboard, a kind of a prototypical platform that can be thickened and developed and really kind of changed as necessary going forward as more information becomes available, technology changes, the necessity to kind of understand what's going on in particular places with a higher degree of resolution becomes necessary. And also to inspire and to teach and to discover, to fortify local efforts in community technology and data science for social impact. So if people that live in the city want to know a little bit more about the assets of their neighborhood, if they want to know a little bit more about how city resources are allotted, or the difference between the environment as can be measured through the system and other environments in the city, we feel like that can kind of add to the ability for Chicago citizens to be more informed and kind of more active and with the data that's provided. So the aspiration of the project is that enough of these nodes, hundreds, are installed in the city such that we have a right balance between resolution and coverage. such that the data that is collected is really useful for urban science and for research. So the Array of Things project is also an array of partners. There's lots of entities and individuals and organizations collaborating to develop this thing and kind of put it out there into the world. I'm from the SAC, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I've been kind of collaborating with Charlie Catlett of the Urban Center for Computation and Data for a while now. And so I'm leading a small team of artists and designers at the SAC that are really kind of providing services around the instrumentality and the interactivity within the Array of Things project. So the instrumentality, the design of the physical enclosure, the materials that we use to make the box, how is it connected to the pole? What is it to make something and put it in a neighborhood, a unit of technology, and just leave it there without any kind of overarching plan. That's not what we're trying to do. And then also interactivity. We really want the Array of Things, each node in the system itself, to be seen as a system that is open and available for people to understand more about their city. And we also kind of see the Array of Things project itself as the opportunity to produce some really interesting kind of community interaction, education opportunities, and outreach around technology in the environment. So SAC folks, me and SAC folks are kind of handling that element of the project. So early on, as we were kind of thinking about the way each node would look, how it would be manufactured, what are the materials, what is the relationship between the electronic components and the installation and the place, we kind of keep coming back to the idea that potentially every node, in addition to being a part of a larger kind of systemic instrument, would be something in and of itself. It's meant to be seen. It's not neutral technology that is kind of gray and invisible. It kind of fades into the background. It could be something akin to public sculpture or something that you might actually have direct contact with. So, for example, early ideas was that each node had the ability through kind of controllable LED light to use the data that is collecting and being made available and provide a really simple messaging system about environmental conditions, like, for example, the air quality in that spot at that time. Lots of formal development, physical prototyping, thinking about the size and the shape and the materials and light elements and attachment techniques and things like that developed through our interaction on the project. So one of the kind of design plateaus we reached, this is like version 2 of the enclosure, was an enclosure that was actually kind of big, was meant to be seen. It was consisted of layers of material that would kind of come together. And let me switch to this one. That could be layered and come together to produce kind of a local and kind of an iconic image in one place that could be different from an iconic image used in another place. So if we tried to connect participatory design activities with the development of the physical form, we would want to have the design be able to be customized per installation. So in this scheme, what you see is an enclosure that is large enough to hold all sorts of different electronic components in kind of a generic way. So big enough that we could make changes to how components were installed inside the box. We could add stuff, we can take stuff away, we could use electronic components that were not custom made, things that were kind of operating within the kind of prosumer class of electronic experimentation. But then it was layered with materials that we could use numeric control and kind of rapid manufacture processes to produce individual images, individual responses to what could be valuable for people in a particular place. And then also, through kind of participatory design processes, not just making changes to the physical form, but also thinking about what data might be useful for a particular neighborhood versus another neighborhood. It might be more valuable to kind of understand the way urban heat island effect is producing a warmer, smaller climate in your area versus some other part of town where what might be more valuable is air quality or ambient sound or liveliness or activity on the street. The node had to be general enough that any of those kinds of things could happen, but it could also be customized per site. So this is the state of the enclosure right now. So we've gone from a box that was generic in that it had to be able to account for a variety of different technologies to one that's a little bit more custom made, a little bit more compact, smaller, easier to make, cheaper to manufacture, but still with the basic idea that it wraps around the pole. There are kind of layers of shielding in between the box and then what you see that gives us the opportunity to produce kind of customized screening and filters and whatnot, both for sensor performance but also for appearance. Now I'm going to shift to talk a little bit more about some of the things we've already done for community outreach and participatory design. Is your toaster a silent recruit in a ThingBot army? So this is an article that just came out a couple of days ago. Every day there's dozens of articles that are examining the kind of the phenomena, the emerging condition of the Internet of Things, the kind of ultimate electronic interconnectivity of everything, and why it might be good and why it might be bad. So one thing that we've learned on this project is that when you produce an instrument that has the ability to collect data and you put it out in the world, people have an opinion about that. Issues about privacy, about surveillance, about the value of the data, who owns the data, how is it used, how long does it stick around, in what way are these issues being kind of folded back into the project so that you're producing an instrument that kind of produces value for scientific research in the way that you want it to, but also can't be co-opted later to do something that we don't want from our public technology, right? And so it's kind of addressing those issues about understanding the value and the usefulness of data and technology in the environment. That is kind of the thing that is really kind of driving a lot of the outreach and education activities on the project. So, the collaborative team that is working on the Array of Things over the last few years have participated. We either created or participated all sorts of events where we are kind of connecting with people in a variety of ways in the classroom, at public events, and kind of purpose-made events about technology and its usefulness, data collection, and the value of kind of understanding what's going on in the built environment through specific measure as a kind of educational activity. So the last summer, we started to do this specifically with the Array of Things project. So we connected with a summer program that was running here at the University of Chicago, where high school kids were coming together in a 6-week program that was looking at community asset mapping. So the activity of the summer program was just to be more aware of the neighborhood that you live in, and with a really kind of thick descriptive process, collect information about what it is, understand where you live. And so we kind of proposed that another element that could be kind of considered an asset of your neighborhood is what can be measured through the kind of sensor clusters that we were putting in the Array of Things project. And one of them was air quality. And so we ran kind of a sub-workshop within the summer program for 3 days where we worked with students using really simple kind of off-the-shelf accessible microcontroller technology like the Arduino. We helped them make their own air quality sensor. We helped them put that air quality sensor in a rugged enclosure that you could kind of, buy the parts for at Target and power with a rechargeable battery. So we made 3 of these things with them, and then we distributed them in the small group. They took them home. They put them on top of bus shelters. They put them in their kitchen. They put them in their backyard. They strapped them on the top of their car, and they collected data for a week. And then they came back, and we then worked more with them to kind of, pop the SD card out of the sensor, look at the data, and convert that data through really simple kind of, graphing and mapping techniques so that they could begin to understand what was going on in a real resolute way in that situation that they instrumented. One of the students kind of, was surprised to learn that the air quality inside of her house was measurably less healthy than the air quality outside of her house. There was an idea that, inside my house is safe and outside of my house is not safe. Well, it turns out, that she put the air quality sensor next to the stove, and the stove has cooking fumes, and there's things that are going to be measurable. And so it kind of, because we kind of produced an understanding of the way in which an element of the environment was working in her with data and number, it kind of, caused her to think more about what was kind of going on, what was available through this kind of instrument. And so from that workshop activity, then we could host a bigger discussion about, well, what if we did this, at a larger scale? What if we created an instrument that was really about understanding the way an environment works in terms of what can be measured as a kind of community technology as public infrastructure. So that's kind of where we are now. So we're in the kind of development process where we're going from making dozens of prototypical devices to thinking about the kind of final manufacture of hundreds of devices. And then as we kind of roll this thing out, we're kind of intensifying and creating even more specific pedagogy around the workshop activity. And what we'd like to do is be able to kind of really begin to do things, with people and data such that we can look at even more robust and kind of interesting ways of taking the data and doing visualization experiments and all sorts of kind of mapping exercises so that they can get as much out of an understanding of what's going on in a particular place from data as possible. So I'm going to stop now, and I've got a couple of minutes for Q&A before I hand it over to Charlie Khaled. Is there anything? Yeah. Yeah.
How many?
Yeah.
What is an approximate number that you're aiming for?
I think ultimately, how many hundreds? I mean, no more than 500, right? It's, there's real value in this project, kind of doing things incrementally. So we put out 10, and then we put out 50, and then we put out 100, because it provides a pace that allows us to kind of build relationships with community organizations, to find the right way of kind of introducing and describing this system as a community technology, to do kind of interesting and kind of non-trivial workshop activity. And so, and a lot of that is also going to be driven by the science itself, like to what degree of resolution ought this thing be installed. It could be that there, a certain amount of density of installation is okay for a particular neighborhood, but we want more units in another neighborhood because there's active research activity, at the University of Chicago where that neighborhood is a subject that wants to be examined.